there's a lot of people, they're all waiting for someday. They don't call somedayitis, waiting for the 401k to kick in, retirement to kick in. So they're sacrificing their happiness for a majority of their life to enjoy later. And my whole thing is, that day may never come. What sort of a life is that? You've heard of the guy or the girl who have retired, who have maybe exited their business, maybe sold off their business and retired and had 1 or 2, 3, maybe 10 at best good years and then gone. So they've sacrificed a good portion of their life to just have a handful of years. That is so sad to me.
Welcome visionaries, creators, innovators, entrepreneurs, leaders, and growth seekers of all types to the Passion Struck podcast. Hi, I'm John Miles, a peak performance coach, multi-industry CEO, Navy veteran, and entrepreneur on a mission to make passion go viral for millions worldwide. And each week I do so by sharing with you an inspirational message and interviewing high achievers from all walks of life to unlock their secrets and lessons to becoming passion struck. The purpose of our show is to serve you, the listener, by giving you tips, tasks, and activities you can use to achieve peak performance and pursue the passion-driven life you have always wanted to have. Now, let's become passion struck. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Passion Struck podcast. And thank you for helping us become one of the top 1.5% most watched and listened to podcasts in the world. I am so excited that we are providing value week in and week out for you. And for those who are here for the first time, thank you for joining us. Our purpose is to help serve you. As our message said at the beginning of this podcast, we want to give you all those lessons, advice, and tools so that you can unleash passion in your own life. I'm going to start today's episode off with 2 quotes. The first is from Annette White, who is the author of Bucket List Adventures. And she says, stop daydreaming about your bucket list and start living it. And the second quote is from Sir Richard Branson, who said, coming up with the bucket list is the easy part, but ticking off the list is the challenge. I love a good challenge, which is why I strongly advise everyone to come up with a bucket list. It doesn't have to contain out of this world tasks, but once you have written down the list, screw it, just do it. And these are both great setups for our guest today, Trav Bell, all the way here from Australia, otherwise known as the Bucket List Guy. And I had such a great time talking to Trav, and we discussed so many things from his early journey as a fitness trainer, what he was able to accomplish, and then how he altered his life, and how that initial drive subsided over time as he got more and more worn down by that job. And then he started this next chapter of his life. We're going to talk about what that next chapter has turned into, how his life has changed, and his lessons to you about creating a bucket list and what that can do to create passion in your own life. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about Trav Bell. He has been helping people create and realize their innermost adventures for over 20 years, armed with the dream that everyone should live a regret-free life. Travis is passionate about helping people create and live their bucket list before it's too late. He says a bucket list is a tangible life plan where our business plan or career plan should fit in with our life plan and not the other way around. No one practices more than what they preach than Trav. His crazy, globe-trotting adventures are contagious, hilarious, and always fresh. He is the author of the best-selling book, My Bucket List Blueprint, which I'll put in the show notes. And before Trav became the Bucket List Guy, he founded and franchised a chain of personal training studios across Australia. Starting with just one client, he and his team went on to do over 2 million personal training sessions and motivated tens of thousands of clients. And that background is why Trav is now regarded as one of the most in-demand motivational speakers in the world. And I'm so happy to have him on the podcast where he can share his wisdom and this whole idea and unpacking this concept of living your bucket list life to its fullest. There's so many parallels to his vision and what we're doing here on Passion Struck. And now let's get on with today's show. I am so excited to welcome Trav Bell, the bucket list guy, to the Passion Struck podcast, all the way from Australia. Thank you so much for joining us, Trav.
Hey, John, stoked to be on, man. Yeah, really can't wait to get into it.
Well, and I know here we're just getting into the summer, and for you all, it must be kind of frigid there, given what you're wearing.
Yeah. I've normally got the mohawk under here, but I'm in the southern part of Australia, just an hour and a half out of Melbourne, which is the state capital of Victoria, which is the southern part of Australia. So it's not always just nice, blue waters and sandy beaches and everything that you Americans get sold about Australia. I'm not in the outback. I'm in the cold bit right now. Anyway, we're about to go into winter. We don't snow, so it's just sort of ugly kind of Scottish weather for a good part of the year. But then when it gets summer, it's certainly heats up and the beanie comes off.
Well, when you first came on today, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm interviewing The Edge," and I was expecting Billy Idol. So,
yeah, look, yeah, there you go. Nice reference. I'll take that. No, I can't play a musical instrument to save myself. So there you go. Maybe I should put that on my bucket list.
Well, talking about bucket lists, one of my bucket list items was my son is a very accomplished percussionist, and
oh wow,
his drum kit was just sitting around, and I'm like, I need to learn how to play percussion again. I tried it out when I was a kid, played a little bit then, but managed to do it about 4 or 5 years ago. And boy, what a difference it's made, because anytime I am just feeling so much stress, I just go to the drum kit, and in 10, 15 minutes, all the stress is gone. So
yeah, well, there you go. Like it is. I've got a kind of a similar story. I published My Bucket List Blueprint 2 weeks before Christmas, and it was like 10 years in the making. So if you're watching this or listening to this, I'm just holding up the book here, and it's only this thick, John. So that's pretty pathetic, isn't it? It took me 10 years to write a book this thick. But the point is, I really wanted to reward myself. Long story short, I've just turned 48 and I've just bought myself a DJ deck. Like with a 4-channel mixer. So I like, electronic music. Some days I like heavy metal. Some days I like nice, sweet opera. Just depends on the mood, right? But I bought myself DJ decks, and when I get into mixing music and stuff and sampling and loops and all that sort of, I just lose myself, and I've never had that before in my life, that because I can't play a musical instrument. So this is the next best thing for me.
Well, that's great. Well, since you're approaching 50 and I just turned 50, I happened to interview a guest actually earlier this morning. She's a former polar explorer. She lives in England, southwest side of the Isle, and
she's pretty much polar anyway.
Well, Cotswolds, and she was telling me she just did something called 50 at 50, and it's something I thought you would love, because she has developed 50 challenges, some of them that she knows she's going to enjoy, like skydiving, but others, things that she's forcing herself to do because they're going to be really hard on her. But I thought, what an inspirational way to launch your 50th birthday. So I thought that was a great beginning of my day, and to talk to you and hear about your journey to becoming the bucket list guy is a great ending of the day.
You should be super inspired by the end of today, John.
So for the listeners who are out there who don't know my background, I got to spend a lot of time in Australia for a period of about 2 years. Part of the time that I was working for a company that you might know named Lendlease. And at that time, we owned the MLC Bank. I think it's now owned by NAB, National Australia Bank. But Australia was one of the most incredible places I've ever lived, and especially living in the Sydney area, because Sydney reminded me kind of a combination of San Francisco and San Diego put into one.
Yeah.
And I add San Diego because you could hit the mountains in San Diego, kind of like you can hit the blues in Sydney. But one of the things that I really loved about living there was just the ethic of the people. And it was kind of a work hard, play harder type of environment. And I have really missed that the rest of my professional career, because I don't know if anyone does it as well as the Aussies. So Thought I'd
we,
throw it in there.
we do like to play pretty hard, that's for sure. We like to think that there's a little rivalry between Sydney and Melbourne. I lived in Melbourne. I'm on the coast now, but about an hour and a half out of Melbourne. But essentially, I'm a Victorian, and we're Melburnians are pretty proud. There's a Sydney Melbourne kind of rivalry that we're the arts, we're the cultural capital of Australia. That's what we like to say. And plus, we've been voted 7 times the world's most livable city in Melbourne too. Whereas Sydney, I think, a little bit more showy, a little bit more superficial. That's what we like to say anyway. But it's beautiful up there.
Well, one of the interesting things I found, and I think you and I have this in common, is, I work out almost every day of the week, and it's, when you think about using a prioritization, for me, it's one of the first things I always put on my daily prioritization because it helps me so much with anxiety, other things,
Right.
clarity of mind. But one of the strange things I found when I was in Sydney, it was so hard to actually find good gyms. And I know for the first
Wow.
bit of your life, I kind of wanted to introduce that you were a very successful gym owner. And in fact, your team, I read, taught over 2 million different classes. So I was hoping you could talk about that period of your life before we get into this next phase.
Yeah, man. Look, I I grew up here surfing, surf lifesaving, swimming, and I was kind of like pretty much, as you say in America, a jock. So that led me to be an athlete, be good at sport, and led me to do a physical education degree. So I did an undergrad in human movement, became an exercise physiologist essentially, and in my third year uni, this is pre-internet. We understand, remember back in the dark ages, pre-internet, pre-social media, pre-crackbook, Instacrack, and there was a guy by the name of Tony Hewitt who came in, and this is in the early 90s, and he was doing this thing called personal training. And at that stage, there was no industry of personal training. There was the gym industry. We're kind of coming out of the 80s with the leotards and the short shorts and the whole bit. And he was doing this thing called personal training, which was quite foreign to the whole industry, let alone the general public. And he was getting paid, quite handsomely to train celebrities and train wealthy people. And his dollar per hour rate certainly crushed what I would get if I worked at a gym. And I just became obsessed, not with the money, but just with the freedom that he certainly had with this thing called personal training. So I became, kind of his intern without, a label. And he just said, subscribe to this magazine, go to this conference, read this book, et cetera, et cetera. So I just did everything he said. It was my first mentor, really. And by the end of third year university, it was a 3-year degree, I had my first handful of clients, and I was making some pretty good money to the point where I'm like, well, do I be a kid's high school, PE teacher or do a government kind of job or go into personal training? So personal training won. And so I grew it from one client, and my record was 63 1-hour mobile personal training sessions in a week. And that was, in Melbourne. So I moved to Melbourne and grew that business. And just by referral only, it just grew and grew and grew. So I became maxed out pretty quickly. And I got a heap of referrals, didn't have to advertise that much. And then from there, I was one of the first in Melbourne to get a personal training studio. I had 13 personal trainers working within that studio. And the entrepreneur story, I stuffed up a few things before I realised I was a great personal trainer, but pretty shitty business person. Got a business coach. He said to me when I was sleeping in my personal training studio to save money, he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "What are your goals around this whole business?" And I said, "I'd love to be the first to franchise personal fitness training studios in Australia." So I just sacrificed, I worked hard, we systemised everything, and a year later we sold our first franchise, ended up franchising that concept around Australia to be the biggest personal training company. Have, probably over 300 personal trainers under that umbrella, servicing clients, and did close to 2 million personal training, or over 2 million personal training sessions, tens of thousands of clients. and did that for about 20 years in the personal training industry. But then it was a bit of a breakdown before breakthrough moment, which I'm sure that you'll you'll delve into.
Well, interestingly enough, I have used my fair share of physical trainers, and I find, like anything, that there's really good ones and ones that don't, work for me as well. And
Yeah,
I happen to have one on the show, although she hates being called it because she says that's such a small part of what she does. But
yeah,
she had this formula that she came up with for branding, you could say, called the other 23 hours, because she said most people go to the gym for an hour, but they don't think about all the other things around it that could make their performance in the gym or their performance in life better. And that's what she calls the other
oh yeah,
23 hours.
that's
And
logic. Yeah,
I think there's something there that really separates some trainers that I've seen from others, and that's that they don't just treat it about your time in the gym. They kind of look at you holistically and what's
mm,
going on, and how can
mm,
your wellness improve? How can you get better performance out of other areas of your life? And those are the
yeah.
ones that I was always drawn to.
That's where I fell in love with coaching. One of my highest values, I reckon my highest value is, of course, you've got family, you've got my health, but helping others is one of my highest values. I actually don't feel fulfilled. I don't feel like I'm on purpose, and I don't feel like I've got meaning in my life if I'm not coaching someone. I'm not helping someone else with their potential, or at least experience more of their own potential. And that's what really lights me up. And it has ever since I got my first personal training client. And then you get more of that positive reinforcement as you coach, train, personal train, help more people. And that's just it's a tidal wave of positive feedback that you're getting, not from an ego point of view. It just makes you feel really good. And that's my way of being of service to people. So the cool thing about being a speaker now, I get to stand on stages around the world and really effectively personally train or coach one to many from the stage and just help more people in the least amount of time. So it was always continue to do it. I think I'm an educator by trade. I can't help myself.
Yeah.
And so that's just what's led me down this coaching, training, speaking kind of path, which has been good. And I'm stoked that I identified that early on.
And I want to now get to this pivot point for you. You were like so many people that I coach or that have reached out to me since I've started the Passion Struck podcast. And there are people who find their passion early in life. Their passion could be like you had, being a physical trainer, and then after a while something happens and it shifts.
Mm.
And I think more and more people are having to reinvent themselves. I've had to do it numerous times during my career for different
Yeah.
reasons, but what was that inflection point for you? I mean, what happened to get you out of, leading this successful franchise company and to where you are today?
Yeah, well, the pivot point, it's a good thing to delve into, because I think for people maybe listening, watching Passion Struck podcast here and wanting to find, that word passion gets thrown around a lot. And I think, there's a million coaches out there that love to sell, let's monetize your passion, that idea. But you only realize, I think, what that is everyone has their own personal breakdown before breakthrough, that confusion before clarity, that storm before the rainbow epiphany, before you actually seek your passion. You only seek your passion because you're unhappy in something else, right? So the pivot point for me came as a result of life just getting on top of me. I built something that even though I love the end product of personal training, I became a franchisor, and I became too much of a lawyer, too much of an accountant. I know that stuff's critical to success and understanding it, but there was some also quite, I say, cancerous people that became part of our network. But I'm not blaming them. That's a victim mindset. I let them in. I let them run on the rope for, let them go too far. And as a result, it became a really big issue within the business. So there's a lot of legal blues going on. There was other things happening in my life. It was kind of like, a bit of a downward spiral. for me. And I slipped into a bout of, albeit mild, depression as a result. Love the end product of personal training, but I was just falling out of love of the business model that I created. And it was around that time that I got this tattoo. It says, if it is to be, it is up to me. So I'm showing my tattoo right now. And, to take responsibility, take ownership, be accountable to myself. But instead of going on heavy sort of antidepressants, which is kind of like a Band-Aid effect, I forced myself to really invest in going to personal development events, going to seminars, learning about psychology, learning about the Akagi principle, learning about the law of attraction, positive psychology, NLP, life coaching, and this sort of stuff. So that soup of personal development is really what I got into. But at the start, I had to really force myself to go, because when you're going through depression, it's the last thing you want to do is be around other people and then get into that comparisonitis, which is what we all suffer. So I worked through some stuff. I've walked on fire, I've hugged it out and high-fived it with strangers. I've broken the arrows, bent the bars, all that personal development stuff. Really worked through some stuff though, and got to the core issue. And it was about a year and a half into that kind of phase that a friend of mine said, Trav, why don't you teach this stuff? And just by him saying that, helped me compartmentalize what I was going through. I'm really grateful for my health. And there was a thing that, an incident that really happened as well that helped me really turn that up a notch. And it was when I was in one of these, I think it was an NLP training I partnered up with this lady by the name of Deb. And she told her story, I told mine, why we were there in the first place. So I told mine first, and I said, that's me. And Deb says, thanks a lot for sharing, Trav. It was great. We hugged it out. And I said, what about you, Deb? And she said, I'm 45 or whatever she was, and I've just had a hysterectomy, and now I'm cleared of cancer. And I really wanted to have kids, and I'm quite lonely. And I just went, dude. And really, it gets me emotional thinking about that time. And I just had this overwhelming sense of gratitude, overwhelming. Dude, like I go to, and my thing was I was led to believe that if I was to be a good presenter, a good speaker out there, or a good coach even, I'd have to have gone through some rougher stuff to earn my stripes to be able to teach this stuff. What have I got to do? Cut off a leg? Or what have I got to do? Sleep under a bridge? Or what have I got to do? Go through abuse, go through a really bad drug problem to qualify as a personal development speaker? No, I became instantly grateful. I've got excellent health. I'm overall, I'm pretty happy. I'm not lonely, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what? How dare I play small? How dare I don't go as big as I possibly can, and go out there and be a speaker, help go one to many, coach one to many from the stage. So it was Nick saying, why don't you teach this stuff? It was Deb, and a lot of other factors sort of led me to then put on a talk. I put on a public talk. I nearly had to pay the 40 people to come to that talk, by the way. I was so freaking scared. And it was about half, and I packaged in everything I learned, my entrepreneurial stuff as well. About halfway through the talk, I told everyone in the room that I'd had a list to do before I die, actually written down since I was 18. And no one knew this about me. I said, who else in this room has got a list actually written down, to do before they die? And I quickly realised I was the only freak in the room. So I said, well, why do you get up in the morning? Why do you work? Why do you want to earn more money? What's your reason for getting out of bed? Oh, I don't know, pay off the house, put the kids through school, do a bit of travel when I'm older. Yeah, possibly sicker. So it really inspired some of my stories of why I made decisions quick in business, why I got off my ass really quick, And right at the end of it, Joe, one of the participants there, said, hey, Trav, how's all this list to do before you die stuff? And this was 10 years ago. It's really inspired everyone. It's like a bucket list. You're like the bucket list guy. I went, ping, light bulb moment. And that night I went home and registered the bucketlistguy.com and defranchised the whole personal training business. And I read the Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week at that time as well. I'm like, you know what, and back in those days, going online was quite foreign to do offline of bricks and mortar businesses, traditional bricks and mortar business, to go online and run everything from a hammock in Thailand like Tim. Sounded pretty cool. So defranchise the whole thing. That took me a few years to do. Sold off those businesses, got them to rebrand themselves. Some of them are still going today, which I'm really stoked about. And then went online with the bucket list guy with I just felt right. The passion was there. It was, no one could take it from me, really reflected who I am as how I could live congruently. And here I am today, 10 years later.
Well, that's great. And I'm going to unpack a number of things you've said there, but I'm going to start off by saying kind of the purpose when I came up with Passion Struck was not necessarily teaching people how to find their passion. I think a ton of people are out there discussing that. It's more, how do you live a passion struck life? And when I started coming up with this name, similar to you, I had a mentor. His name is Keith Crotch. He was the most recently CEO of DocuSign, currently the Assistant Secretary of State here in the United States. And we were talking, and I was telling him, I had been doing all this research, and I had worked with some really high achievers throughout my career. And I said, I keep seeing something that separates people like you, people like Tim Ferriss, Mark Benioff, Oprah Winfrey, whoever you want to say it is.
Happy to be mentioned in that sentence. Yes, that's
from the rest of the pack. And I'm like, they are so consumed by a problem or an issue. If you look at like Gandhi, the issue of anti color racism, or if you look at someone like Abraham Lincoln going after the anti-slavery movement, that they become tunnel focused on it, and they're willing to give up everything else in its pursuit. But then it's beyond that. It may be their core being, but they're doing other things around it, where like Tim Ferriss is living on islands, kind of like Tony Robbins. They're living this bigger life around it, and it becomes less about working hard than it becomes more about living their life, not only in pursuit of it, but all around it. And so, when you reached out to me, that's one of the things that caught my eye about the bucket list concept, because being passion struck is really in some ways about unpacking your bucket list. So
yeah, I think so. I think living congruently to your values as a human being is the holy grail, for a lot of people. Because you look at in America, right? So 80 to 90% of people are what they call disengaged at work. Like, it's a frightening statistic, and the highest in the world, right? So there's like, let's say 80%, I think it's like 79, 89% or something like that. Let's say 80% of people who go to work every single day in America and don't like what they do. They're not into it. They're just getting the paycheck coming home. And that's really sad. There's a lot of people, they're all waiting for someday. They don't call someday-itis, waiting for the 401k to kick in, retirement to kick in. So they're sacrificing their happiness for a majority of their life to enjoy later. And my whole thing is, that day may never come. What sort of a life is that? You've heard of the guy or the girl who have retired, who have maybe exited their business, maybe sold off their business and retired and had 1 or 2, 3, maybe 10 at best good years, and then gone. So they've sacrificed a good portion of their life to just have a handful of years. That is so sad to me. I want people to be happier now, because look at the statistics. Apart from the engagement statistic at work, depression, anxiety, these things that have affected me, suicides, youth suicides, the overprescription of antidepressants. And we've even got this thing now, John, called the loneliness epidemic, which is the adverse effect of social media. And so these statistics are climbing. You go throw COVID in on top of that, dude, you've got a perfect storm of mental health. So really what my whole passion is, my mission is to get these personal development tools, that I know work, because I've got a 10-year history of it being a tangible thing that people can grab and use in their life and have a happier life, have a more fulfilled, more meaningful, more purposeful life. I've just put, it's kind of really what I teach is positive psychology. but I've just put this brand of bucket list over the top of it to make it more fun, more tangible. And so at the end of the day, this 10-year history of helping people do this has led me to go, you know what, let's have a crazy goal of trying to change the narrative, trying to help as many people as I possibly can. This is my passion, help and reverse some of these statistics. I mean, why not? Instead of going to the cure, let's get onto the prevention side.
Well,
instead of drugs helping people through depression, let's give them some personal development tools. So it's not met with skepticism, not weird, not cult-like-ish. Put them in the hands of people so they can use it and live a happier life. Not wait until later on, or not wait until they get given a use-by date, which is what the whole bucket list movie was about two guys who get given a cancer diagnosis and then they write a bucket list, which is absolutely stupid. So, crap movie. And I've based my whole career on it. But I want to wake people up now before they get given a use-by date. Give them some tools now before they get given a use-by date, not just for them, but for their kids as well.
Yeah, so I happened to be listening to a podcast earlier this week. It had David Goggins on it, who I'm sure if you know who those other people are, you know who he is. And he has this famous philosophy that he's known for, that he thinks people are living only 40% of their potential. And my statistics and my research draws a much closer correlation to what you're saying. And I believe the number is drastically less. And that's why I say people I'm trying to reach are the broken, battered, bored. I call them life's underdogs because, they're not really living the life that they're meant to be living. And, similar to you, I kind of came from experience because I was doing it myself. I was stuck in this corporate job for so many years where after a while, I just dreaded every day of going in because burnt out, I wasn't spending my time doing anything that truly excited me. And the politics were just becoming worse and worse the more senior I got. But you just get completely burned out. So, the reason I brought you on the podcast, or one of them, I love the story, but you and I share the same mission, and it's to influence millions around the world to live a passion-struck life or to live out their bucket list. So one of the things I did want to ask you about is when I was listening to your TED Talk, one of the things you talked about was creating a reverse bucket list. And I was wondering if you could unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, reverse bucket list, because you ask most people, that TED Talk I did in front of 2,000 people, that was on my bucket list, as you saw. I ticked it off live in front of the crowd. And the concept of the reverse bucket list is because when I go and ask a crowd of, say, 2,000, 5,000, 10 people, I can guarantee that most people haven't even written down a bucket list. So I asked that 10,000, I asked that 2,000 people at that TED Talk, who has got a bucket list here? And everyone's like, yeah. Who's got one written down, like out of their head, actually written down? Yeah. Some are like, yes. Another, portion are like, yeah. I go, the people that have got their hand like that, you haven't really got it written down, have you? You're just doing it to show off to your mate, aren't you? Yeah. All right. Put your hand down if you actually haven't written it down. So about 10% of the audience have actually written down. Actually less. In that audience, they were pretty advanced, so about 10%. But normally, it's hardly any. So why do we write it down? Well, at the moment, your bucket list is up there with your daily to-do list. And guess which one gets done first? Your daily to-do list. That takes priority. And just life gets in the way, and that's what you focus on. Most of your bandwidth is on your daily to-do list until something dramatic or traumatic happens to you or a loved one. And suddenly, you're just like the movie, your bucket list becomes important. It's like, fail, too late. We create a reverse bucket list for people to help them build a done list. And it's a done, all the stuff that you've done in your life. So, John, if I sat you down now and said, all right, what have you done in your life as if it were on a bucket list all the way along? And I want you to write that stuff down. Remember, this is a big gratitude exercise. This is positive psychology. One of the pillars of positive psych is gratitude, right? So if we remember everything that we've done in our life as if it weren't a bucket list, it puts people automatically into a happy place, into a grateful place, into a place of thanks, and into a place of like, you know what? If I've done some pretty cool stuff. And it automatically makes people happy, even if they're really sad. But it takes actually some real thinking and some time out of your life to work on your life to really think about, because we live in such a world where we're focused on the future. We're focused on the next goal, and we forget about what we've actually done until we pause and reflect back on the timeline of our life. And people are like, hey, if I actually put some thought into this and I was intentional about the forward design of this thing, I could move mountains, because by default, I've kind of done all this stuff already. But what if I actually put some thought into designing? So a lot of us are living by default, not by design. They're existing and not living. So helping people take time out to reflect is a big gratitude exercise, and what I call reverse bucket list. So really, when you cross something off your bucket list, it goes onto your reverse bucket list. Keep adding, keep subtracting, and find a really cool vehicle that, whether a business or job or career, that spits out the two resources that it should if optimized, and that is cash flow and time flow, to allow you to do your future and reverse bucket list. And that's Trav's meaning of life right there. And pick something that you're passionate about. Pick something that doesn't do your head in on a day-to-day basis, that produces the cash flow and the time flow. And I think that's the holy grail, right? If you love what you do and it's producing what it needs to produce and allows you to do your bucket list, I think that's where it's at. So reverse bucket list is your done list, and your future bucket list is obviously your future bucket list. But that's what everyone concentrates on. And people don't even write down their future bucket list because it creates even more pressure. But we start with the reverse, and that gives people hope.
Did you know that Forbes magazine recently cited that 70% of individuals who do personal development, masterminds, and one-on-one coaching benefited from better work performance, increased communication skills, and overall better relationships? And we at Passion Struck are obsessed with self-development, coaching, and mentorship. That is why we've created a free resource to help you unlock your hidden potential. Because people doing great things in business and life are just like you, only they've had a coach along the way. And we've got that covered too. Let us show you the systems and frameworks that we teach growth-minded individuals to help them step into their sharp edges, execute on their passion journeys, and get predictable results time and time again. Go to passionstruck.com/coaching right now, and let's get igniting.
I have this chapter in my book called The Bee and Turtle Effect. And one of the things, you call it a bucket list, I call it a personal contract with yourself. They're basically the same exact thing.
Right.
And I tell people to come up with a personal contract, write it down, these life goals that you have, these aspirations, kind of highlight it somewhere. You could even laminate it, but then you've got to work backwards. So the bee and turtle effect is you take both aspects of a turtle who's very slow going, but looking at the long-term goal, with the bee who's there doing something every single day, working on whatever they need to work on, in benefit of the hive or what the queen is asking. But it's mastering both of them, because if you create that bucket list and it's got, let's say you put 25 items on it and you don't start prioritizing them, you're never going to get them done. So what is your guidance when you are working with a client or you're speaking to an audience like you are right now about, one, how do you go about creating that bucket list? And then two, what's your advice on tackling the items on it?
And those that are watching, you'll get this. And John, can you just describe what you're looking at on the pitch on the screen here? What is that?
It's one of those old pop-up pens that you have that has black, red, green.
What's this?
Pencil.
Right. So we've got a pen and a pencil. I know it's a crazy analog suggestion here, but it's these things. And what do they do, John? I'm being facetious here. What do they do?
They allow you to write down thoughts.
Oh my God. So, and what's this stuff here?
Paper.
All right. So guys, what's easy to do is easy not to do, right? most people don't even write down goals. What is it, 63? If you actually write stuff down, goals, let alone bucket list items, you got a way higher, like 64% chance of them actually coming to fruition. So you're nearly halfway there if you actually just write stuff down. A lot of people just don't. A lot of people don't even use diaries. They don't even write down their goals, And so, again, what's easy to do is easy not to do. Why write a bucket list? I know what I want to do. Well, yeah, but again, it's in the soup of all your daily to-do list items. And again, which one gets done first? So I challenge people to do the simplest of things. And that is obviously be remiss of me not to promote the book. It's more of a guidebook. I did the TED Talk around the My Bucket List Blueprint. It's a 12-letter acronym to help you unpack, to help you go north, south, east, west in your own brain and help you extract and articulate a personally meaningful and holistic list. And a lot of people think of that as travel. Well, travel is just one of the 12 steps. It's a 12-step program. Sounds like AA. But at the end of the day, it helps people really go holistic with their bucket list. There's way more than you think. And so once you put pen to paper or pencil to paper and write this stuff down, that is in itself a consciousness exercise. That is about making it more real. And there's research that suggests if you actually write stuff down, pen on paper versus typing it into your phone or typing it into a document, it's actually got more conscious, it's more of a conscious effort to actually write stuff down. You have to think about it more. But in the process of actually writing stuff down, you're basically typing into your own Google machine, which is that piece of real estate between your ears. But you're not, if you're not writing stuff down, you're not punching anything into Google. So how is it going to search? How is it going to distort, generalize? How is it going to filter the information in your world with so much coming at you if you don't type something into your search engine? That's what you've got to do. That's what writing down does. Okay, so let's write a bucket list. Better yet, John, and all your listeners and watchers, send me your bucket list. I challenge you to send me your bucket list. All right, this is the accountability piece. All right, just email it to me, trav@thebucketlistguy.com. Even watch the TED Talk, buy a book, I don't care, but just send me your bucket list. Use the categories as your guide, go nuts. There's no judgment. I've been sent some weird shit, I tell you, of what people want to do. I've stolen some of those ideas, but no judgment, no comparison, no trying to keep up with the Joneses, no wondering whether this is right or wrong. It doesn't matter. It's just you against you. And weird things, when you send it over to me, because I'm actually writing my second book, which is the My Bucket List Blueprint in Action. So I'm on the hunt for 365 bucket lists right now across the world from different people. So send it to me and then have a look at your bucket list and do the easiest thing that you possibly can on it. All right, action it. Like literally the easiest thing requires probably no money, no time, just attention. So go do it and go do it the next one and create what I call a bucket list snowball effect, because it really will give you that momentum and motivation to smash through the bigger ones and tap into, the motivation level, the inspiration level. Grade each one out of 10. 10 being, I really want to do this before I die. And 1 is, you know what, I don't really care. But going to Mount Everest base camp and doing an Ironman on my bucket list was right up there. Those are the top 2 things that I wanted to do before I die on my original to do before I die list that I wrote down when I was 18. And I was, I'll move heaven and hell. I'll do anything to make that happen. So I did, and it doesn't mean anything to anyone else. It's not about comparing mine against yours or mine's
Right.
bigger than yours, any crap like that. So don't worry. But I bet it's really about the why. It's about the why attached to each of those bucket list items. And if the why makes you cry, if the why has a lot of emotion, you'll find a way of making it happen. Don't worry about the how just yet. When you're writing stuff down, don't worry about the how. Just worry about the what and the why. Don't worry about the how. The universe, if you want something bad enough, the universe will provide. It'll show you the way.
Well, that's great. Well, what you're describing is something that I call action stacking, because I believe in this pursuit of the contract or the bucket list, you start taking actions and you start stacking them. And as you stack more and more, you gain more and more momentum. Because yeah, when you start this, it could be like your car breaks down, you're on the side of the road. Imagine you don't have a telephone like we do today that you can call someone, and you got two options. Either you can be the victim and you can wait for someone to come and try to help you, and you have
Mm.
no idea when they're going to come or not, or you can
Mm.
start pushing the car or
Mm.
walking and trying to find help. And if you
Yeah.
start pushing it, it may be very difficult at first, but I guarantee you over time, you're going to get momentum. It's going to get
Yep.
easier, and eventually you're going to hit a downhill path,
Yep.
which is exactly kind of what you're talking about. And what you're saying has tied into the last three solo episodes I've done. You're going to love them. One is on the I don't have time syndrome, because we don't make time for what's most important to us. We end up spending our time on what's urgent instead of what's important. I did the one before that on the law of attraction and why it works, and how
Yeah.
when you put the right things out in the universe, they're going to come back to you. And
Yeah.
then the other one that I did was on living a pinball life, which so many people today are doing. And it's kind of
Mm.
like, instead
Mm.
of playing the game of pinball, you let it play you. And that's what your
Yeah, I
bucket
love that.
list is all about. So since you've started this new stage of life, how has your life been different? Like, what has changed for you? Because it's one of my favorite questions to ask. You had this very successful career before, and
Well,
obviously, yeah. So how are things different now?
depends on how you define success as well. In the last few years of doing personal training, I wasn't happy. So I wouldn't say I was as successful at all. Sure, there might have been more dollars in the bank or whatever, but at the end of the day, if you're not happy, I don't think, you're not successful. Right now, it's all about lifestyle design. I mean, I'm also the founder CEO of Certified Bucket List Coaches. So, 3 years ago, a business partner approached me and said, "Oh, have you thought about allowing other people to teach you stuff?" I went, "No, this is all mine. This is what makes me different. This is me, 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 me." So, all right, well, I think you can really scale this out. So, long story short, now we've got certified bucket list coaches in 22 countries around the world teaching my stuff, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
So it's about
you're taking the franchise of the personal trainer, and now you're
licensing. Yeah,
franchising it out. Yes.
yeah, yeah. But that being said, it's all remote. I've got a remote work team that lives, in different parts around the world. It's all online. No one actually is directly employed for the head office. I get to run everything from home, my family, and I get to design my day how I want to. And we use tech, but this is all set up pre-COVID. And at the end of the day, I've designed my life around my business. I've designed my business around my life. I say a bucket list is a tangible life plan, where our career plan or our business plan should fit into our life plan and not be the other way around. So really living congruently to this work to live principle, and what I call work-life blend, not work-life balance. So, now life is a lot more congruent. Life is easier, that's for sure. And yeah, to be honest, I go with more gut and more intuition than I did ego back in the day. So, but still learning, still a muscle that I'm not going to say I've got it completely sussed, but still certainly the tools and everything allows, or the tech allows you to really design the life that you want to design. And this was what Tim Ferriss was talking about all those years ago.
Well, look at him now. He's just checked out completely for the next month or 6 weeks. No email,
Yeah,
can't reach him anyway.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
well, so if the listeners out there were curious, was there a relationship or a person that you think helped you more than others? Because or that really got you to take this new path that you're going on? Because I believe so many people say they want a coach or say they want a mentor, but few really lean into it. And for me, it's been one of the biggest difference makers in my life. What is the single most important relationship to you in helping you get to where you are today?
I think the relationship with myself, at the end of the day, if I'm not, again, living to my values and I'm living someone else's life, their design versus my own, I think that's what it's all about. And I think that's a rarity, like even in business, I think we can design businesses like I did. I what do they say? My ladder of success was up the wrong wall. Well, it wasn't up the wrong wall, but it was up the wrong wall certainly for the last, maybe a few years of doing it. But I built the bloody thing. So I built the ladder and I put it up that wall myself. So I think the biggest realization is working yourself out, working out your own psychology. So, and your business is always going to be a reflection of the owner's psychology. So I'm always learning to work on myself. Something, John, that I'm doing at the moment, which is on my bucket list, which is an ultimate challenge on my bucket list, is reading 52 books in a year. Mind you, they've started out at like War and Peace, really small type, and they'll probably end up at like Mr. Men books, but or one-page ebooks. But the point is the ripple effect that's had into my life, these challenges, and have been absolutely awesome. So, but I did that for a growth challenge. Sure, we've got Ironmans, we've got Mount Everest, we've got all these other things, but doing an intellectual challenge like that, and that'll be one to stay. I literally woke up at 4:30 this morning, read a couple of chapters, and I'm just going through books. This is literally all the books that I've read right here. All the books that I've read since I started that challenge, with the latest one being The One Thing. I'm always living my bucket list in some form or another. I'm doing 5 things on my bucket list at the moment. And so that stuff pulls me out of bed in the morning. I don't have to motivate myself. And this is what I encourage everyone who's listening and watching to this. This stuff pulls you out of bed in the morning. It makes you want to go to work, and makes you want to optimize your business. It makes you, it helps you make decisions quick, and rather than just sit on the fence. It helps you take responsibility. It helps you take ownership over your life. But if you think that this whole concept is just about ticking cool stuff off your list, it's not. Really what it's about, John, is about how we reverse engineer every aspect of our life in order to make this stuff come to fruition. It's really about the growth of us on this journey towards these self-imposed destinations. But most importantly, it's about the person that exists on the other side. And that's the person that we don't know yet. It's all about the person that exists on the other side of your bucket list tick. That's called our potential, right? And when, as human beings, if we experience more of our own potential, it puts a smile on our face, makes us happier, more fulfilled, and that's what it's all about. And that hopefully can reverse some of these statistics that I'm angry about.
Well, that makes 2 of us. And I think we're both motivated to try to help and serve all those who are listening to this podcast get out of that rut. And
serve yourself. It's not just about all other people. Like one of the most common things that myself and my coaches get told is, thank you for giving me permission to dream again. Thank you for giving me permission to be self-serving again, especially to mums, because we're always in sacrifice, always helping other people. And I get that. That's all part of it. But take the power back yourself. Lead by example.
Yeah, one of the best bits of advice I ever got was career mentor I was going to, and I was probably at the highlight of my professional career. Was CEO of a software company at the time, and he kind of stopped me dead in my tracks, and he said, your life is going well, or you think it is, but you're living it on a stool that has one support. And he goes, everything is in that foundation. And if something happens, that sucker is going to fall over and you've got nothing else to pick it up. And he goes, you really need to start thinking about your life as is in a stool that has multiple supports. And those supports can be different things. One could be your career. One could be wellness. One could be a travel excursion. Another one could be that. And he's like, if you start thinking about it like that, and he wasn't talking monetary. He was talking about those things that make you feel whole inside. It could be a charity you work for. He goes, you've got to start embracing your life like that, because you keep going down the route that you're going and it's so singularly focused. And he was so right. And so since I've changed that approach, I have become so much happier in how I live life and in what it has. The universe is now brought back because of that. Because through that journey, I really started serving others Whereas before, similar to what you were saying, I think I was stuck on my own ego, my own showmanship, versus doing things that really benefit others and putting, that aspect of my life, not at the primary point that it was. With all that said, you have unpacked a ton of great knowledge tonight. If a listener wants to get a hold of you, you've given it a couple times. I'll put it in the show notes for sure. What are some of the easiest ways that they can connect with you?
Oh, look, that's easy. Go to thebucketlistguy.com. That is me. They want to check out bucket list, being a bucket list coach, maybe bucketlistcoach.com. Have a look at that. Instagram is bucketlistguy.travbell. And I think, Facebook and LinkedIn is Trav Bell, the bucket list guy. They'll find me. Just put in the bucket list guy. Hopefully I'll pop up on Google somewhere. And, send me a direct message. I want to, both John and myself, we share that, what really, we don't do this for ourselves. We do this, to help others. So from this message, from this, gathering of messages, we want to see what you've done, how it's inspired action, not just giving you more ideas to put on your plate, but what have you done as a result? And I encourage everyone to take action. Like I said before, get a book, sure. bucketlistguy.com/book. You can get one of those or get it from Amazon. But more importantly, get your pen out and just hack into it. Abuse it. Write in it. Use it as a guide. Dog-ear the thing and make sure that you send us your bucket list. That's what we really want to support you in.
Yeah, and I could have said it any better. Our mantra for the show is you got to make a choice. You got to work hard, which means you got to take action, and you got to do something every day that scares you. Step into those sharp edges. So that's great. And I'm going to end the show like I always do with a rapid round of questions for you. And I'll give you a layup to start out with. What has been your favorite bucket list item that you've completed thus far? I thought it was a layup.
I thought I've done like 300. Look, I could easily say, I'll publish a book, but probably going to one of the big ones. The morning of my 40th birthday, I was there with my dad, and I took 10 bucket listers to Machu Picchu on the morning of my 40th birthday, which is pretty cool. That's the one that, I don't know, I saw a picture of it before, so I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I could say Everest. I could say, last 2 years ago, my partner Tracy and I, went to the Colosseum. I really, really, really wanted to see the statue of David, and we got to see the statue of David in Florence, Sistine Chapel. These sorts of things, walking the Cinque Terre with Trace, heaps of, there's so many different things. I could say Iron Man, I could say, but I'm not going to say skydiving. They're all, part and parcel. But it's the things that involve other people that are more meaningful to me these days. It's less about me, it's more about we now.
So what is the most important item left on your bucket list that you want to achieve?
I've got a big one, and it's leave a legacy. In the leave a legacy category, and that is with Bucket List Coach. I want that to be an absolute game changer. Our mission is to affect the lives of 10 million people to live purposely fulfilled lives, or to tick it before they kick it. Hashtag tick it before they kick it.
I saw that.
So I can't do that alone. That requires a lot of work that we're moving, certainly moving into right now, and helping people. We've got bucket list coaches in countries where if you actually translate the word bucket list, it makes no freaking sense at all, but they still get it. So when you start helping, we do school programs called BL4K, Bucket List for Kids. So we're getting this stuff out to school kids, to teenagers. We're helping people, around the world in different countries in different languages. And that's probably the big one that requires the most work. And that's the legacy play. That I want to maybe, who knows, grow it, exit it later on, and to help it thrive, who knows. But at the end of the day, that's something I want to be really proud of. Okay. That I am already proud of, but want to just blow it right up.
So one of the questions I always like to ask is, if there was a person living still or dead that you've never met that you could, who would it be and why?
Elon Musk. Yeah, simple. And I would take my 2 boys along with me because they love Elon Musk as well. I just think the way that guy thinks is absolutely phenomenal. And I won't be the first person to say that. And I think, just give him I reckon just give Elon the keys to the world and let him run it. And we'll probably be in a better place with less bureaucracy. Depends on who you speak to, though, don't it? But I think I'd love to meet Elon Musk. I've met some pretty cool people. Had lunch with Tim Ferriss when he came to Australia. Meeting Tim Ferriss was great. And I would have loved to met Muhammad Ali. I would have, oh God, who else? There's still a lot of people I want to meet. They're still alive. Yeah, we're getting there.
Me as well. Well, I brought up the Be Internal effect. That whole chapter is all about Elon Musk. And some of the times I've actually met him or seen him speak, but he has perfected the Be Internal effect. And you just look at SpaceX and what has allowed him to get to where he's going faster than anyone else is when they actually came out with the contracts for commercial space flight, they actually allowed you to either bid on the manned capsule or you could bid on kind of the storage capsule going up or both. And he was the only one who had the foresight to do both because he started off a little bit slower, but now look how much he's jumped ahead of everyone else because he's designed something that can do both. So if someone was going to come to Australia, what would be the one thing you told them they have to do or have to see?
3 days ago, we can't do it here in Victoria, but 3 days ago, my kids and I were in Queensland, and they held a koala bear. I think that's the American rite of passage as well. I think that's those koalas have hugged a lot of Americans over the years. We sort of take them for granted to a certain extent here in Australia. Not that they're running around the streets and around their houses or anything like that, but for the kids to effectively cross that off their bucket list or experience that was pretty cool, and I recommend that to definitely people coming, or to go surfing at one of the famous beaches. Learn to surf. That's what we do here. We surf and hug koalas.
So what about those tiny microscopic jellyfish that you guys have?
Yeah, we don't mess with them.
I remember being at Manly in Manly Beach in Sydney, and there were these nets everywhere, and I thought they were for sharks. And my buddy, who was a surfer, said, no, they're actually for the jellyfish. And as a side product,
those are pretty full on. But they're in northern Australia. You actually can't swim in northern Australia because of the jellyfish at certain times of the year.
Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show. This was absolutely a superb episode, and I know the listeners got so much value. Well, I can't wait to follow up with you and hear more about this journey you're doing that's so important. And I hope your inspiration touches the 10 million you want it to.
Yeah, well, we've got one life. We've got to give it a crack, don't we?
Yeah, that we do. Well, thank you again.
Thanks heaps, John. See you, everyone.
What an awesome interview that was with Trav Bell. And I learned so much from him. And it was uncanny how much his mission and what we're trying to do with Passion Struck, although we use different terms, are so much in common with serving you, our listeners, or our watchers, and helping you unlock passion-driven life through the creation of your own bucket list, those dreams, those aspirations that will fulfill your passion in life. And I mentioned a number of different episodes that we had done during this interview, and I'm going to just recap them for you. There's Victoria Humphreys, a polar explorer, who is doing her bucket list challenge of 50 at 50. And you are so going to want to download that interview and take it in. She is a remarkable woman. There was also astronaut Chris Cassidy, who I interviewed, where he talks about his adventures from being at the Naval Academy to becoming a Navy SEAL, to becoming a NASA astronaut, to eventually, along his career, becoming the chief astronaut and going up into space 3 times. Chris, along with Victoria, accomplished so many on their bucket list, but they both have so many more to go. And that's the important thing here, is taking lessons from each one of these episodes and my personal messages in between, and learning how to apply them to your own life. And not all of them may apply, but the purpose of this show is to give you content that you can pick and choose from and apply to your own life. And I hope we're doing that for you. And we are well on our way to making passion go viral to millions around the world. I hope you will continue to subscribe to the Passion Struck podcast, where I will bring you high achievers from all around the world in all walks of life that will give their advice on how they become passion struck, and you can too. Thank you as always for watching or listening to the show. And now get on with igniting your own passion journey. Thank you so much for joining us. The purpose of our show is to make passion go viral. And we do that by sharing with you the knowledge and skills that you need to unlock your hidden potential. If you want to hear more, please subscribe to the Passion Struck podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts at. And if you absolutely love this episode, we'd appreciate a 5-star rating on iTunes and you sharing it with 3 of your most growth-minded friends so they can post it as well to their social accounts and help us grow our Passion Struck community. If you'd like to learn more about the show and our mission, you can go to passionstruck.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter, look at our tools, and also download the show notes for today's episode. Additionally, you can listen to us every Tuesday and Friday for even more inspiring content. And remember, make a choice, work hard, and step into your sharp edges. Thank you again for joining us.